yeah, we are just, a species among other species, one of the species among other species, and so on. So we don't have to deny that. Okay. But does it follow from that our story ends there? Does it follow from that we're nothing but biological entities? So there isn't anything that can be said about us that can really kind of set us apart from the mere biological features that we display, just like other species. Like many people think, in any case, Darwinian evolutionary theory completely put to rest this illusory belief that many people have about human exceptionalism. Okay. Darwinism might have helped us when it comes to, let's say, Darwinian theory might help us to some extent when it comes to solving the easy problem of human exceptionalism. But I don't believe that Darwinian theory has a lot going for it when it comes to the hard problem of human exceptionalism, because the hard problem of human exceptionalism is absolutely a metaphysical, theological matter, and we have to treat it as such. Otherwise, the confusion continues and the muddled thinking continues, and we will never be able to come out of that confusion, in my view.
Because I feel like it indirectly makes a case, or can make a case of, or can open the doorway at least for a de novo creation of Adam or Adam alayhi salam.
Yes, God has to be part of the discourse, and that's not an option.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Incisive Thoughts, and today we have something very, very special for you guys. So today's guest is going to be very special. It is an unexplored topic. Today we have Dr. Guta, who is going to join us today, and he is someone renowned in philosophy, specializing in the philosophy of mind, cognitive science, cognitive psychology, and theology. He has spent years tackling some of the most profound and complex questions about human nature, consciousness, and the intersection of science, philosophy, and metaphysics. Known for his rigorous yet accessible approach, Dr. Guta has become a leading voice in exploring the mysteries of what makes us truly human. It's an absolutely honor to have him here. So let's call him on stage. Hello, Doctor. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you so much.
So I missed mentioning the topic. So an introduction to the topic is also very important. So our conversation today dwells into one of the most profound and debated questions in philosophy and science. It's known as the hard problem of human exceptionalism. While many of us may take human uniqueness for granted, the question of why humans stand out so distinctively among all other creatures remains a deeply complex and unresolved challenge. Is it just biology, or is there something more transcending that sets us apart? Together with Dr. Guta, we will unpack the easy and hard problem of human exceptionalism, explore the limits of science in addressing these mysteries, and discover how metaphysics and theology, particularly from a Christian and Islamic perspective, can provide compelling answers. This isn't just an abstract philosophical discussion, it's a journey into what it means to be human and how understanding our uniqueness can reshape our worldview. So, starting with the first question to Dr. Guta, according to you, in a very brief sense, what makes us unique? What is unique about humans?
Thank you for this question. I think this question is extremely sensitive in the sense that it really kind of engages so many people from diverse disciplines. And, in the context of religion, in the context of philosophy, in the context of science, everyone is really trying to understand and also kind of to tackle what makes us unique among other species. There are so many answers given for this question, and it depends really kind of where you're coming from. The topic that we're going to discuss today, human exceptionalism, it's a very sensitive issue because how you answer this question actually determines what kind of answer you end up giving for human exceptionalism in the first place. So in a nutshell, before we get into some details, so some people say, well, human beings are exceptional because human beings, let's say, are essentially souls. Like they are embodied beings, but they are not their mere physical bodies, or they are not collections of matter, for example. Human beings have something like ontologically unique about them. And even though they have physical bodies, even though they are extended in space, even though their bodies are composed of elementary particles configured in a very complex ways. But if they have souls, or if they are souls, then the soul is an essential part of, an essential nature grounding, essence grounding aspect of them. So the soul itself cannot be identified with, let's say, the physical body that embodies the soul. Is fundamentally distinct, and therefore that aspect, for some people, that aspect makes human beings to be very, very unique compared to other non-human species. Well, this is a very controversial point. As I've said, everyone doesn't really think that way. So in the context of human exceptionalism, our relationship to nature, our relationship to ecosystem, our relationship to environment, our relationship in general to nature has to be reconceived, has to be reconceptualized. We're not unique. We're part of nature, and we are in nature. We are part of nature, and so on. There isn't anything that makes us to be unique in that sense. We're just a species among many thousands of other species. There's nothing unique about us. We're just biological beings. So as you can see, there isn't a single answer that galvanizes, that kind of brings everyone to speak in one voice. So we have to acknowledge that, and we have to make a case for our own view. But it wouldn't be fair to megaphone one view as if it's kind of universally embraced. And this is exactly what makes us to be unique. But I have a ton of other things to say during the course of our discussion. But I'm sorry, I can't give you like one single answer that represents everyone's view.
Right. Yeah. So when it comes to the exceptional nature that we have, can we list out like, some things that, on a like, very basic level, like what are the qualities or attributes that human beings have that makes us exceptional?
Excellent. So for example, take, look, what I'm about to say is going to be a bit controversial, and so many people really do not accept it because they think that these are not good enough reasons for us to think that we're exceptional. Take, for example, language. We're language-speaking creatures. And take our capacity for creativity, our capacity to entertain complex thoughts and engage in complex reasoning. And look at the human civilization in general, the progression of human civilization and where it's now headed, and technological sophistication and so on. There are undeniable things that we can really say that really set us apart from the rest of other species. Look, other species also have their own incredible capacities that we human beings actually don't have, right? So, but in terms of creativity, in terms of reasoning, in terms of planning for the future, and in terms of the things that we do, I have a very difficult time of how we can be in a position to compare ourselves to other species. Look, you and I right now, take a simple example. You and I are now engaging in this kind of conversation. If you have a dog, bring your dog and let your dog sit beside you. And look, what I say would make no sense to your dog. A dog is not the right kind of entity to engage in a kind of conversation that you and I are now having. So look, people think these things are simple things. These are like nothing. These are not really surprising things. These are incredibly surprising things. Look, take logic, for example, take math, take calculus. quadratic equation or whatever. Take quantum physics and all sorts of things. Like, we are incredibly and insanely smart creatures, insanely gifted creatures. I don't think we should deny that. I don't think we can say those things are simple things. They are not simple things. So look, some people say, well, okay, yeah, we can grant all of that, but our difference from other non-human species is just a matter of degree. It's not a matter of, we're not different in kind. We're just just a matter of degree. We may be doing these things at a higher level, but other species can also do, to some extent, what we are capable of doing. And it's not clear to me. It's not clear to me. I have never heard any species like building a house or creating or inventing drones or mapping out to invent something in the future and analyze it. If you take other non-human species right now, their number one need is to literally fill up their stomach. Like, just get something and then the day is okay. That's it. They're not going to sit there and think about U.S. economy or Indian economy or how to stabilize the world's security or natural resources. And there's nothing happening in the world of non-human species. Well, look, in saying this, I don't want people to misunderstand me. I'm not really kind of denigrating or undermining or belittling other non-human species. I'm just speaking the facts. But we human beings are incredibly dissatisfied creatures. We always want to stretch ourselves. We always want to challenge ourselves. Now we are worried about whether other universes exist. We are also kind of having a desire to even live in other planets if it is possible. We're sending rockets and all sorts of things to other planets and so on. Look, why don't we admit this? We are, yes, unique. We are absolutely we have those exceptional gifts that really put us on a different level. So I just don't share this fear that many people have. If we admit our exceptional gifting or exceptionality in a very fundamental metaphysical sense, then we will be cruel to nature. We will deny that we're not part of nature. We have nothing to do with nature. Nature is there for us to be used by us in any way we want. I completely don't believe that. That shouldn't happen. That's kind of sheer misunderstanding in my view. And our exceptionality is totally consistent with our responsibility, moral responsibility, to protect our environment and to absolutely respect other species as well.
Right. So now I want to go back to your talk that you had in, I think, 2003. It was it was an amazing talk, and I would firstly link the description. I would want everyone to watch that. Now, regarding that, I have questions. So you made two categories of our exceptional nature. One was the easy problem of human exceptionalism, and one was the hard problem of human exceptionalism. So what is the easy problem of human exceptionalism, and what is the hard problem of human exceptionalism? If you can elaborate.
Good, excellent. So the easy problem is, let's say, people say that there isn't any significant difference between us and other species. So this is a very, very common view, and it's a very dominant view. So I call that equality thesis. The equality thesis simply says that any differences that you can point out between us and, let's say, other non-human animals is a matter of degree. It's not a matter of it's not a difference in kind. It's just a matter of degree. So I call that the equality thesis because it's possible to solve that problem easily. Let's say you can solve that problem by admitting that you are part of nature. You're not you and I are now here on Earth, right? We are part of nature. The laws of physics work on us as they work on other non-human species. We have biological needs, and our bodies also kind of are under the laws of biology, just like other species. So in some sense, you have to admit that there is equality, right? In some sense, yeah, I think I'm a biological being. I should be able to admit that. I shouldn't really deny that I'm not a biological entity. I am a biological entity. I'm a biological organism in some good sense, because my body is biologically constructed, and it operates under the guidance of the laws of biology and the laws of physics and so on. So in science, you can say a ton of things about that aspect. So the easy problem of human exceptionalism is all about, yeah, we can admit that there's a sense in which, yeah, we are just, a species among other species, one of the species among other species, and so on. So we don't have to deny that. Okay, but does it follow from that our story ends there? Doesn't follow from that we're nothing but biological entities. So there isn't anything that can be said about us that can really kind of set us apart from the mere biological features that we display, just like other species. You see, that's not going to be a scientific question. It's going to be, let's say, a metaphysical, ontological, and theological issue. Now, for that, I think that you should take a different approach. You should take, for example, not a kind of a mere quantifiable and measurable approach, which we call that's empirical approach, the scientific approach. But I think you should engage with that in a metaphysical sense. When you engage in a metaphysical sense, I actually introduce two different characterizations about that. And one of the characterizations that I attach with the easy problem of human exceptionalism is, it goes something like this. Consider, for example, within human species, you can talk about exceptionality based on achievement. Let's say, for example, if you're a student and you might be a high achiever, right? So you might be called like, he is exceptional, okay, because you've achieved more than others actually did. So in that sense, within the same members of human species, you can talk about exceptionality. And within that context, you can also engage with other non-human species and say, look, we all are a broader biological family. Within that family, we might have differences, but at the same time, we can talk about minor exceptionality, but that exceptionality is not going to be a metaphysical nature. Now, put that aside and come back to the second characterization that I introduced, which I call the uniqueness thesis. The uniqueness thesis is a thesis that takes us to what I call the hard problem of human exceptionalism. The uniqueness thesis says, look, a certain species, such as human species, belong to a different ontological category compared to, let's say, non-human species. We're not only biological entities, there's a sense in which that we can actually talk about us belonging to a different ontological category. If we belong to a different ontological category, then there are properties that we instantiate that other species do not instantiate. And based on those set of properties, we can talk about our metaphysical nature. So we belong to a different ontological category. In light of that, we instantiate a different set of properties. And now we can ask ourselves, what kind of entities are we, fundamentally speaking? Are we simply biological entities or non-biological entities as well, like in a fundamental sense? So I argue in the talk that I gave in 2023, there are good reasons to think that human beings instantiate set of properties that are not properties instantiated by other species. Even if you take human consciousness is incredibly different from animal consciousness, for example. It is grounded in first-person perspective, it's entirely subjective, and it is born by the self, or if you believe in soul, the soul, and so on. And the reasoning capacity and the creativity that we have I think all of these things put us in a very different context and in different place. It's incredibly difficult for us to say that human beings really behave and do things in the exact same way that other species do and behave. No, we do things that other human species have never done. We do things that other non-human species could not do and never did in the past. And they are not doing at present, probably will never do in the future. So there are things that automatically set us apart. And if that's the case, that should be handled metaphysically and ontologically. So it seems like we have features that are ontologically and metaphysically unique to us. In virtue of that, we can talk about the hard problem of human exceptionalism. So we kind of agree on the easy part, but we have to tackle the hard part. So the hard part is the hard part because features associated to the, to hard problem of human exceptionalism are not available anywhere else other than with us.
Right. That reminds me of something very interesting. I was going through a discussion of Dr. Ajit Varki, if you know him. He is one of the leading figures in human evolution, and he was explaining to Dr. George Swamidas, and explaining how, like, if you just take a dictionary and if you take any random word and if you see how many of those words are, I think he said most of them are just things that human beings can do and no one else can do. No other animal, no other species can do. So, like, there are so many examples. Like, if you remove a dictionary and if you want to see the differences between human and animals, like most words are associated just with human function or human things. Anyway, that was just a point that came to my mind. Now, coming to the easy problem and the hard problem, can we have, so we accept the easy problem, as you said, and the hard problem also should not be overlooked with the easy problem you mentioned. So when it comes to the easy problem and the hard problem, can we have like examples of both? So like for example, when it comes to the easy problem, let's say human beings have less hair on their body than any other species, any other primate, for example. So yeah, you can explain that, there's a problem, how this is something that is unique to human beings. But then you can go back, use biology, and you can have an explanation. And this would be in the easy problem. I don't think this would be a problem at all. But yes, I'm just for example's sake, this would be categorized here. And an example of hard problem, as you mentioned, would be the hard problem of consciousness that we have. This would be in the hard problem of human exceptionalism. Is that kind of categorization right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So look, again, all of these things are pretty controversial because it depends where you're coming from, whether you're a physicist or naturalist or dualist and so on and so forth. Take, for example, this is just to give you one example. If you take certain interpretations of Christian way of thinking about our responsibility as human beings in relation to the environment around us. In Christian theology, theologians talk about stewardship. Let's say God has given us, the world, He has created us, and kind of we've been given an authority and dominion over creation and so on. So I think
we have the same in Islamic theology, like it's an overlap with both these theologies, right?
Right. So if you take that, for some people, stewardship or having dominion over nature is being looked at negatively, but it shouldn't be looked at negatively. Stewardship is a huge concept. If you are a steward over something, look, the responsibility you have is incredible because you should be extremely responsible in how you handle what you've been given, in how you protect it, and so on. For example, a very simple down-to-earth example. Let's suppose I have a big mansion, and for some, let's say a week or so or 2 weeks, I have something to do in Europe, and there isn't anyone who can look after my house or something like that. Let's suppose you're my friend, and I ask you to look after my house, you can use it for about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I will be away. Please, you can just help yourself. You can cook food. You can just do whatever you want, and so on. Do you think when I return back from my trip, do you think you should hand over to me a destroyed house, a completely trashed house, and completely like everything is in disarray? Is that what you're supposed to do? No. So when I allow you to use my house, the responsibility on your that you have is huge. You should be very careful. You should protect it. It should be neat, and you make sure that everything is in the right place, and nothing is really kind of being abused and misused. But you can enjoy. Let's suppose I am away for a year, or let's say 5 years. For all those years, you can literally have friends over, and you can do everything. You can swim if I have a swimming pool, or if I have a TV, you can turn it on. You can do whatever you like. But you always are responsible to really protect that property. That's not a license for you to misuse or abuse or to destroy, to do things that are not appropriate, for example. I think this analogy perfectly works in the context of stewardship. Creation is not supposed to be destroyed or misused. It should be used responsibly. We're not good at that. We know that. We have to admit the truth. Very selfish, very, very selfish, and we destroy our environment for our own selfish reasons.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that reminds me of one quote, which is very unrelated and a little naive, but I would still say, like, there's one quote from Spider-Man, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. I think that is applicable here, because in the end, if we have this, authority given to us, then at the same time, then we have extra responsibility also endowed upon us. I would say that.
That's the confusion that you see in the literature. So there is what you call like sort of like a quasi-fallacious thinking. Oh, if you think human beings are exceptional, you're setting yourself up to think crazy, and you really don't care. You're going to destroy nature and behave in a kind of in a very bad way. I don't buy that argument. That's a complete misunderstanding. So we can hold both human exceptionalism and our moral responsibility, legal responsibility, I would even add, social responsibility, individual responsibility, to be absolutely in charge of nature and protect it and completely use it in a responsible way.
Right. Interesting. So coming back to the easy problem and the hard problem that we were discussing. So you mentioned that the easy problem is basically something that can be tackled by science and potentially can be explained by science even in future, because in the end, we have to understand what science is. So science basically is a discipline which is relegated to the physical, as Elliot Sober and many others would tell us. So if there are some mysteries about human exceptionalism, which are relegated to physical, which are relegated to biology, even if we don't have an answer now, we can still hope for science to explain it in the future, because we have this discipline and it has been unraveling many of the mysteries regarding our nature and regarding many things related to us. But what is more interesting is about the hard problem of human exceptionalism, which actually is dealing with something that science in principle cannot address, because it is dealing with metaphysical questions, which also comes to the core consciousness. No matter if a person is a physicalist, in the end, he has to dwell into the metaphysics and have a metaphysical view regarding the mind, which is not something he can just rely on using science. So in that sense, the hard problem of human exceptionalism is something that cannot fully be addressed by science. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So I think my talk, for example, the talk that you referred to that I gave in 2023, definitely kind of discusses that very issue, because like take, for example, Darwinism, Darwinian evolutionary theory in general, very, very prominent theory and extremely influential. and it continues to be influential as well. So many people have believed that Darwin actually completely destroyed our illusory belief that we are exceptional. And Darwin actually pulled the rug from underneath, and it completely kind of destroyed that view. Well, I think that's a very strong claim to make. And if we benefited anything from Darwin, then there could be some things, okay, in a biological world, there are biological phenomena that happen. And, Darwin made his own lion's share of contribution in that regard, and, helped us to understand, about the survival and reproductive advantages and mutation and so on. Well, he didn't have a very good grasp about mutation, but it's a later development. But like many people think, in any case, Darwinian evolutionary theory completely put to rest this illusory belief that many people have about human exceptionalism. Okay. What is that? Well, take common ancestor. We all came from the same source. We are all connected at the end of the day in, let's say, in Darwin's life tree. And every species ultimately converge in one source. We were drawn out of the same well, and we didn't kind of separately existed in our own cubicle as a separate entities and so on. Look, I don't want to get into this evolutionary debate here. It's a very sensitive issue, and it's not really kind of relevant to us. But what is relevant to us is the view that people have about human exceptionalism based on Darwinism. So is it the case that Darwinism put to rest the idea of human exceptionalism once and for all? And I have to be frank with you, I don't believe that. And human exceptionalism, the thing that you mentioned about hard problem, is metaphysical in nature. So we need to deal with the metaphysical aspect of our nature. You mentioned about consciousness. Look, we haven't made any breakthrough as we speak in our understanding of the consciousness in general. So everyone is scrambling in science and philosophy and other disciplines as well. Human consciousness is the most familiar thing, the most devastatingly difficult phenomenon to have a very good grip on. And if you really want to understand human consciousness, you have to first be clear about what consciousness is, what its origin is, how it's connected to the nervous system, and so on. In any case, consciousness is one of those things really put us in a different place compared to other non-human species. And as I've said, ability for abstract thinking and so on. But in Christianity, one thing that I want to mention to you, in addition to stewardship, Christian theologians talk about imago Dei, the image of God. Let's say human beings being created in the image of God. Again, when I say this, I'm not trying to sell one viewpoint as if it's universally embraced by everyone, but I'm using it as an example. So, some of your listeners shouldn't be turned off. I'm not really selling a point or kind of trying to, push down their thought, something that they don't have any conviction for. So, but what I'm saying is,
before you make the points up, just to strengthen it. So one question I have, and I think your answer would also add on to that. There is this very famous line from your talk, which is that there is also the hard problem of human exceptionalism. This problem requires metaphysical as well as theological treatments, not just scientific ones. So as we've established that science cannot address many of these issues, which are which are beyond the physical in some sense. So then we need to have a broader view of epistemology and use other routes of knowledge to understand, to come to the conclusion who we are and what is our nature. And in that sense, you are saying metaphysics and theology both are important. Am I correct? And and please go on. Sorry to interrupt.
The image of God in theological reflection is the idea that God has given human beings certain responsibilities. The responsibilities consist of, let's say, you having dominion over nature and being put on top of the, let's say, position for you to be able to carefully and and responsibly treat and use, creation, to enjoy it, to advance, and to improve upon it, and so on. The whole point of technological invention is that, right? We take from nature things, we transform them into something else. In technological invention, we're not bringing anything ex nihilo, out of nothing. So all the materials are already there in a crude form. We're transforming and changing them into different kinds of tools and so on, using our creativity, using our creative mind. Look, a computer, what went into the computer, the materials, the crude materials are already in nature. But you have a laptop. How did you end up literally transforming all of those things into a kind of laptop? Look, that speaks volumes about you, because you have a capacity, what we call creativity. Creativity is a very complex capacity. That capacity has not been created by you. You have it because you are a certain kind of entity. So being a certain kind of entity, you have that kind of capacity that allows you to do that kind of stuff. So the image of God stuff is one thing. And also people should really understand that science is great, right? Science is awesome. Science has helped us in so many different ways, and it's helping us. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Look, nothing follows from that science answers everything. Nothing follows from that. The answer for every inquiry that we have lies in the hands of science. Science is very, very limited in what it can answer in so many ways, in so many areas. For example, if you think you have soul, or you are soul, the existence of soul cannot be proved or disproved by science. So science has nothing to do with the soul. I mean, look, you can't disprove the existence of soul in your laboratory, nor can you prove it in your laboratory. So it's not the right place to pursue an answer for whether or not soul exists or not. For example, so we respect science. We absolutely respect science. We also acknowledge its limitations. So those things are not inconsistent again. For some people, they are inconsistent, or somehow science is, has to be anointed with this kind of all-powerful property. I don't believe that science has that property. I don't believe anything that human beings do is limitation-free. So we human beings are very limited, and science is a human enterprise. So it's something that human beings do.
Okay. So coming back to the topic, I think this is where why I'm pressing on this more is because I want the audience to understand the easy problem and the hard problem. And this is where I'm emphasizing again on that. So we mentioned, for example, something like human creativity, which is not something that, we can just bet on science to explain, to understand completely human consciousness. Okay, you need metaphysical, you need metaphysics basically to understand human consciousness. What are other things which you would add into the hard problem of human exceptionalism? Would you consider human language to be something within the hard problem? Yes. Okay, human rationality, which is like abstract thinking, a mental causation, would that come into the hard problem? Okay. So why? So this is important. So when it comes to our aesthetics, human aesthetics, how we see beauty, because that is also what science cannot explain. So would that also come under the hard problem?
Yes, because our experience of beauty, it's a very subjective phenomenon, right? So I don't think we can establish objective beauty in a sense that, here are the rubrics, here are the criteria for something, to deem something as being beautiful and so on. So look, what seems to be beautiful to you might not be beautiful to me, or I might not experience it as a beautiful thing or something like that. But when I say this, I'm not really denying that what Plato talks about in his writings, like this objective beauty and everything that you experience here is a shadowy form of that objective beauty and so on. But that's one way to think about beauty. There's an objective dimension to it, there's a subjective dimension to it as well. So when we talk about beauty, usually like, look, our engagement is not with the objective dimension of it, it's with the subjective dimension of it. So we come up with different evaluations of why we think something is beautiful, what makes it to be beautiful. Sometimes we have conventional criteria. Based on that conventional criteria, we might call certain things beautiful, certain things not beautiful. For example, take culture. In your culture, certain things might be taken to be, let's say, beautiful, and based on the cultural criteria. The same thing might not be taken to be in the same sense and way when it comes to my culture. So beauty is very, very subjective in that sense. Our analysis of what we call beautiful is pretty subjective. So you froze a little bit for a few seconds.
Yeah. I'm just working on it. So we spoke about beauty, and what about morality, the moral perception, like, the human moral perception that we have? Can that be also, because of course you can't see morality good or bad in a microscope. Science cannot address the issue of morality. Would that also be in the hard problem of human exceptionalism?
And the hard problem of consciousness, because morality cannot be established or handled by science. Here is why. Science needs morality. Look, you do not want to have an inaccurate report from scientists. You do not want scientists to cheat. You do not want to see scientists like misleading you in the way they inform you about things. So morality is a metaphysical concept, and moral domain is not the same thing as scientific domain. You cannot quantify morality. And moral properties are metaphysical properties. And therefore, we cannot confuse with science. Science cannot actually survive without a moral framework. So science needs morality. So morality is prior to scientific enterprise taken as an activity. So yes, absolutely. So we are the only moral creatures. By the way, you raised a very, very good point. A dog is not a moral agent. I don't care how much you love your dog, how much you love your other pets. They are not moral creatures. If your dog bites me and kills me, you will be responsible. A dog is not going to go to court. And no one is going to represent a dog. You're not going to converse with a dog. A dog is not a moral agent. A dog will not have a concept of, oh, I have done something wrong, and so on. People might argue, well, we've trained our dog, and our dog knows mannerism and so on. That's all instinct-based, human, enforced, activity. But a dog or any other non-human species, I don't think they have any concept of morality, and they are not moral agents. And that sets us apart from other species as well. The fact that we are moral agents. That's a very important point.
Okay. What about human free will? Because the questions around human free will also involves metaphysics. Would that be also the hard problem of human exceptionalism?
It's on the hard. It falls within the category of hard problem of human exceptionalism, because free will, as you know, it requires an incredible capacity, right? It's a capacity to make choices, capacity to analyze things, the capacity to foresee consequences of your actions and your decisions. Let's say if I want to do something bad, as a moral agent, I also know what might follow if I end up doing those things. So if using my free will, if I make some ridiculous, careless decisions and take actual step in doing those things, I can also predict what might happen to me. I will get arrested, prosecuted, my reputation will be damaged, and I will be nobody instantly. I know that as a moral agent. So I know the consequences of my actions. And this is absolutely unique about human beings. And this has to fall within the category of hard problem of human exceptionalism. All of these things that we've listed, if those people who deny human beings are not exceptional, they have to give an account. What are we supposed to do with these things?
Right.
They have to assume that burden of proof. Look, they have to show us that other non-human species are also equally equipped in manifesting or demonstrating or even applying or practicing these things. Look, I'm not going to assume that burden of proof. So if they think that I'm wrong, if they think that those people who defend human exceptionalism are wrong, then they owe us explanation. What are we supposed to do with these things? If we are totally equal, if we're totally like on the same boat, metaphysically and ontologically with other non-human species, why the difference? Why are these features available to us but not to other non-human species? And for me, the argument is that there is not a matter of degree, the difference. The difference is a matter of kind. We are different in kind. We are indifferent in kind does not mean, again, we are denying our biological nature. We're still biological entities. But despite that, there is something added onto our biological nature, which is not shared by other non-human species. And those things are consistent.
So I have like 2, 3 more, if we can go swiftly, or like, asking you questions that they categorize in this category or that. So the human need for purpose and meaning, would that be also in the hard problem of human exceptionalism?
Absolutely. So I actually taught a course on the meaning of life, purpose and good life at Cal State University, Fullerton, this past fall. And the meaning of life, look, there are some scholars who think that, oh, a dog has a meaning of life. A dog actually is conscious of them. I don't believe that. There's no evidence that I can point out that other non-human species can think about the meaning of life. The meaning of life comes in different, kind of senses and, various forms. But the meaning of life is incredibly complicated thing. It's a very, very complicated stuff. And what gives meaning to your life might not give meaning to my life, and so on. And we pursue the meaning of life in different ways, through jobs, through marriage, through friendship, through all sorts of things. So what evidence is there that other non-human species literally give us indications that they have this kind of incredible kind of capacity to think about the meaning of life? And what's the meaning of life, and what gives meaning to my life, and so on? That kind of reflection is not there. If there is there, we need to interview them. We need to interview them. We don't have to speak for other species. We have to interview them. Let them tell us. I don't want human beings to represent other animals and tell us that, oh, a dog has a meaning of life. No, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from your dog. Go ahead. To be blunt about it, by the way, I'm not being apologetic here. I'm just saying. So
that's true.
We don't need other intellectuals. We need a species. Let them train them, and let's have conversation with them. What's going on in their mind?
So the whole topic of human spirituality itself is also something within the hard problem of human exception. Would you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. Because there is no indication that other non-human species are pursuing some sort of a spiritual stuff, or they have a spiritual quest, so to speak. But human beings have incredible desire for spirituality in different ways. Through following God, if you don't believe in God, in different ways. For example, Sam Harris, a self-professed atheist, has a book entitled Spirituality Without Religion. So he tells you in this book how spirituality can be pursued without religion. In other words, according to Sam Harris, without believing in some sort of supernatural entity or anything that's associated with that. So now you can see that even atheists have this desire for spirituality, which that tells you volumes about how there's just like Saint Augustine said and Calvin said, there's a vacuum in human heart that can only be filled out, according to Calvin and Augustine, by God himself, who created that vacuum in your life. Other people would fill that vacuum up by, through science or through investigations, through their own natural, non-God involving means or something like that. But the bottom line here is all of us are spiritual in our own way. So we cannot deny that. And there is no indication that other non-human species are spiritual beings. There is no indication. There's nothing that I can tell you. Oh, here is a piece of evidence or a sort of a slight ground to attribute that other non-human species are also kind of spiritual beings. I have no evidence of that. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I have many more, but because we are short for time, so we will stop there with these points of categorization. What I want to ask you now, a very important question is, you think many times many people misclassify the easy problem and the hard problem, and because we have been very successful with solving the easy problems of human exceptionalism, people forget to make this distinction, and they think that because we've solved so many easy problem of human, so many points within easy problem of human exceptionalism, we one day solve the hard problem of human exceptionalism using science. Do you think this misclassification exists?
100%. I have never read anything in the literature, even the distinction that I introduced, as far as I stand ready to be corrected. I have never heard anyone making the distinction that I made. Probably I'm the only person who ever made this distinction.
Right.
The easy problem of human exceptionalism, the hard problem of human exceptionalism. People, they don't have even understanding that. They don't think about that. For those people who reject human exceptionalism, what I call the hard problem of human exceptionalism is the same thing as the easy problem of human exceptionalism. There's nothing like, even if you have creativity and incredible capacity as a human being to do all sorts of things that other non-human species don't do, you are no different than them. The only difference is a difference in degree, not in kind. My argument is that's a total confusion, and it's a lack of I don't know, reflection, I can say. There is a problem here. What we call the easy problem of human exceptionalism, we all agree with that. It's a piece of cake for me. Respect nature, admit that you are part of nature, you are within nature, you're not really kind of sort of completely secluded and kind of you are in your own cubicle. No, you are part of nature, you are a biological being, and you belong to a broader biological community. So believe that and accept that. There's no good reason to deny that. Okay, once you do that, the book doesn't stop with that. There is a problem. There are all sorts of things that we can point out that are not really kind of indicators of the fact that we are on the same level with other non-human species. They set us apart in a very significant metaphysical, ontological, theological, and religious sense. So those are problems we have to work on. We can't lump, we can't really erase the difference there. So I think, in my view, I think I'm the only person so far who introduced this distinction, and I'm going on record. But if someone already made this distinction somewhere in the literature that I haven't read so far, I'll be the first person to confess my sins and pay compensation for that person. So I think there is a huge confusion. No one has made this distinction until I introduced it. Therefore, we are not doing okay when it comes to human exceptionalism. I think our thinking is muddled in this area.
And to be very honest, I have been researching on human exceptionalism, and when I came across your distinction, I'm like, to be very honest, I'm like, it was a eureka moment for me. Like, this is what because I always used to feel there's some issue there with human exceptionalism where people are not taking this seriously. But then when you made this distinction, I was able to understand it better, and this is okay. This is what I always used to feel, that there's some issue there, and now you kind of categorized it properly. So I want to go back to human exceptionalism and talk about how evolution cannot address that. As we have shown, the ontological distinction, which makes us different in kind, not in just degree, and we gave so many points, and which is something that evolution can't explain. There are many things that you can't have a stepwise evolution of that thing. You can't explain that in step. For example, abstract thinking, for example, human language, and many other things. So regarding that, do you think human exceptionalism has always been a problem when it comes to Darwin? I think when he came up with his own theory, he himself was a little reluctant of applying it on humans or not. In the Darwin's doubt, there's an important point there. And then we had Wallace, who co-discovered the theory of natural selection. And then he himself thought that no, even if this applies to animals, there is some, it cannot be applied to human beings, where Wallace himself felt that. And then if we go by, we see the whole history, people started forgetting and neglecting human exceptionalism, but still, until the Scopes trial and many other places, every human being intuitively felt that there's something wrong, where we're just a byproduct of evolution, cannot make sense of who we are. And now, I think if I'm not wrong, it was Fazle Rana and others who are claiming that, now many anthropologists are day by day starting to acknowledge, okay, there's a vast distinction between us and other non-human animals, and, we cannot bridge the gap. Would you agree that that gap, is actually not becoming, as with time, the gap is not becoming and at the start there was a gap, but then with time, the gap was not becoming narrower, it's becoming broader and broader with time. The more we learn.
Absolutely. Look, I think in the interest of time, because we have only 6 minutes, here is what I can say to your, listeners. There is no conflict between admitting human exceptionalism and our moral responsibility, legal responsibility, social responsibility, and individual personal responsibility to be gentle, responsible users of nature, and we should be respectful of other species. Human exceptionalism is not a license to act crazy, to do things in the most selfish way we can think of. Look, that's not a license. Once we get that cleared up, there are good reasons to think that human exceptionalism is not an illusion. It's not an invented thing. We can just see it with our own eyes. Darwinism might have helped us when it comes to, let's say, Darwinian theory might help us to some extent when it comes to solving the easy problem of human exceptionalism. But I don't believe that Darwinian theory has a lot going for it when it comes to the hard problem of human exceptionalism, because the hard problem of human exceptionalism is absolutely a metaphysical, theological matter, and we have to treat it as such. Otherwise, the confusion continues and the muddled thinking continues, and we will never be able to come out of that confusion, in my view.
So one last topic I want to throw down, because we are short for time, and I think this is very important. So when it comes to this categorization of the easy problem and the hard problem, now we've understood that there is this ontological distinction there. What do you think? Because I feel like it indirectly makes a case, or can make a case of, or can open the doorway at least for a de novo creation of Adam or Adam alayhi salam. Because in the end, if there is this ontological distinction that's there, wouldn't we can use this to show that, in some sense, there has to be some intervention, or there has to be some you cannot explain this absolutely in the naturalistic sense. There has to be something which, bridges this gap. And, for example, in both of our tradition, in the Islamic tradition and the Christian tradition, we believe in a de novo creation of Adam. And if we put that missing piece, that puzzle, it kind of fits well and explains everything, which is that, if God actually created our forefather Adam in a de novo creation, which is a creation, a direct creation, not in an evolution kind of way, then it makes sense theologically. We've understood why many of the questions that we haven't solved, they all get solved with this missing piece, which theology provides.
Yes, I think, look, that's the point, but probably we can pick this issue up some other time as well. I'll be happy to continue this discussion with you. The gap cannot be narrowed down through, let's say, scientific investigation or through scientific means or something like that. There's a missing element, and the missing element has to be taken care of in a different way. Let's say within Christianity and the Islamic tradition, as you've said, yeah, I think God is going to somehow be part of the discourse, right? And if we reject that, and there are people who reject that, then they owe us, the kind of the explanation. They can't assume the naturalistic, purely naturalistic way can solve it. But when they don't produce what is required as an answer, as a solution, then there's no good reason for the rest of us to follow their footstep. And I think we have epistemic right. We are within our own epistemic right to assume that yes, God has to be part of the discourse, and that's not an option.
Right. So it was a fascinating discussion, Doctor, and I got many things to learn, and I would actually love to have this opportunity to have you back if you if you ever have the time and broadening this topic, because of course there are many questions that that are still unanswered, and there are some deep topics that in and out. And one thing is the definition of human being itself, which of course in your talk you have given this explained this. So maybe if anyone has a question, we can go there. And many other things I would like to know from the audience from next time, in case if we have you back, we'll go deeper into this topic. But then
I'll be happy to come back on your show again. Yeah, whenever you.
Okay, that's great. And the last point that you mentioned, which is very the key issue, which is we need metaphysics and theology to explain what a human being is. And that is where we can't just expect the theory of evolution or just science to explain that. And if that is the case, then people who just rely on those subjects need to broaden their epistemology. So that is the conclusion that we get from this discussion. Thank you for coming, and I would look forward to have another opportunity with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me again. Have a wonderful day.